So, enough of me. Let me introduce Katie. So, she leads the editorial team for CNN iReport, the network's global participatory news community. iReport, which has more than 1 million registered users, will celebrate its 6th birthday this August. She joined the team in 2007 after graduating from Georgia State University. She's worked as an associate producer with the interactive team for a year, then joined iReport in 2008. Since that time, she's done several projects, including Katrina, Then and Now, Connected by 9/11, and Meet the 99%. In past years, she's coordinated iReport's on-the-ground presence at South by Southwest, and is currently organizing a conference for iReporters and CNN staff members in Atlanta. Outside of work, she's an avid blogger and serves on the board of directors at Mint Gallery here in town, and is an all-around great person. Let's give it up for Katie Hawkins-Gaar.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for coming out today and getting up early. It is such a pleasure to be part of this series and to be Creative Morning Atlanta's first female speaker. That is, that is especially awesome. So, speaking of firsts, as Blake mentioned, this is the first themed month for Creative Mornings. So today is all about art and technology. And this infographic is from Creative Mornings, and I love that they identified the intersection of art and technology as magic. And we will get to that in a little bit. First off, though, a bit about what I do. So I have the very, very lucky job of leading the iReport editorial team. A lot of my team members are here today cheering me on, which is really awesome. So really quickly, how many of you have heard of iReport before? Awesome, okay, not too bad. So for those of you who are missing out, iReport is CNN's citizen journalism initiative. We invite real people to interact with the news, whether it's sharing their own photos and videos of a tornado that just tore through their town, or sounding off on the latest political news, or working with other iReporters around the world on a crowdsourced project. People upload their stories to cnniReport.com. My amazing team does a fabulous job of calling those iReporters and vetting those stories. And the best vetted iReports ultimately make their way online or on TV and help shape CNN's news coverage. Now, you might wonder why I'm the speaker for the Art and Technology Month. And to be honest, I was too. We actually booked this date months in advance, and when the art and technology theme was announced, I freaked out a little bit. You guys are all so very creative, and I don't really consider myself an artist by any means, so it was a little intimidating. Let's see, Blake. but I started thinking about it, and then I got really excited, because I realized that everything about the iReport community centers around the intersection of art and technology. For iReport, we focus on the art of storytelling, whether it's in hard news or more creative pursuits. And thanks to technology, we tell those stories and redefine journalism in the process with people all over the world. So I've had the pleasure of working at iReport for 4 years now. iReport itself has been around 5 years. We're about to turn 6. And during my time, I have learned a ton about how to best work with online communities and what makes a good crowdsourced project. So this morning I'll be speaking from a news perspective, but there are lots of great examples of creative, artistic, crowdsourced projects out there that these lessons apply to as well, and hopefully you guys can take away with you. So without further ado, here are my 4 lessons for making magic happen. All right. Lesson 1, So this idea that everyone has a story worth sharing is core to what we do at iReport. It's not a novel idea by any means, but it is essential to making that art and technology connection happen. Of course, we're not the only ones with this idea. It's what drives social media. When you log onto Facebook, you're met with the prompt, "What's on your mind?" And on Twitter, it's "What's happening?" And these sites are full of people sharing every single moment of their lives. We log on and we share the really important stuff like weddings and births and adventures and tributes to lost loved ones. And, of course, we share the not so important stuff too. Now, whether or not anyone will care how amazing the brunch was that you just tweeted about is up for debate, but it's that invitation, the promise that someone is out there listening that makes us want to share. And a quick caveat, I did actually tweet that, but I promise it was just for the purposes of this speech. Although I think I'm gonna start using the hashtag #hashbrowns because that's kind of awesome. So even though there are plenty of tweets out there like this, and there are because I searched for amazing brunch, and guys, people love to tweet about brunch. It's ridiculous. But even though a lot of people are sharing stuff like this along with the important stuff, it's what's so special about the world we live in today. Anyone with access to the internet has access to a wider audience than ever before. So it doesn't matter whether you're a designer, a writer, a photographer, or something else. We all now have the unique opportunity to interact with people around the world, gain new perspectives on our work, and collaborate with complete and total strangers simply because people are eager and willing to share their ideas, their talents, and their perspectives. So, of course, there is a second component of this lesson. If you truly believe that everyone has something worth sharing, then you have to be a good listener and pay attention to your audience. I'm going to be completely honest. As much as I wish it was, there is a bunch of crap out there on the internet. There are lots of people tweeting about brunch or complaining on message boards or posting completely unintelligible YouTube comments. And it's really easy sometimes to want to just give up and tune it all out. But I'm here today to tell you to fight that urge. It is our job as creators to always be listening and to be the megaphone and shout from the rooftops when we find those stories or those photographs or whatever that's worth sharing. So on iReport, for example, we vet and approve about 8%, just 8% of the 500 or so stories that come in each day. And in order to find that 8%, we have to continually watch the site and pay attention to what people are commenting on and sharing. And if we didn't, we'd miss some really great stories out there. So I could go on and on and on with some of my favorite examples of those stories, but in the interest of time, I will move ahead. But I will be here afterwards if you guys want to hear my stories, because it's one of my favorite things to talk about. But let's move on to lesson number 2. So before I reveal this lesson, I realize this might be a little sacrilegious to say in a place called Unboundary. But I have observed time and time again that people are at their best when you give them limitations. So I don't know about you, but I was always the kid in school who would be paralyzed with indecision whenever a teacher assigned us to write an essay about whatever we'd want. I would spend so much time trying to come up with the perfect thing that would make my teacher really proud that I wouldn't have any time left in the class to write something. On the other hand, though, if a teacher assigned us to write a 500-word essay about ice cream, I would be off and running. I would have written an ode to cookies and cream, and then with the extra 100 words, a very short, heart-wrenching play about a summer without ice cream. And as it turns out, the same happens with online communities. Whenever we issue a broad invitation, like share your thoughts on the election, we tend to get a tepid response. People aren't sure exactly what we're looking for, and they're not sure exactly what to share. However, if we give specific parameters, like asking people to send in photographs, with holding up a sign with a phrase that represents their political leanings, and we give them a specific deadline to send those pictures in, then the response is always so much greater. And the best part is that the community tends to get really creative within those boundaries. The other great thing about boundaries is that it helps you as the creator to do some really awesome work. It is a lot easier to make a meaningful data visualization or awesome mashup video when you have lots of unique content that fits into the same mold. So there are a lot of great examples out there of how creative people can get within set boundaries. But one of the best ones is this project called Star Wars Uncut. So this guy named Casey Pugh had the brilliant idea to cut up Star Wars into 15-second sections and allow people to refilm those sections however they would like. And these filmmakers were given plenty of limitations. They could only claim up to 3 sections. They were given 30 days from first claiming the section to refilm it. They had to stick with the beginning and ending points of the clip and stick with the original dialogue and so on. So let's see how it turned out.
His first mate on a ship that might suit us. I don't like the look of this.
Han Solo, Captain of the Millennium Falcon. Chewie tells me that you're looking for a
Passing to the Alderaan system.
Yes, indeed. If it's a fast ship,
Fast ship. Never heard of the Millennium Falcon.
should I have?
It's the ship that made the castle run in less than 12 parsecs.
I've outrun Imperial starships. Not the local bulk cruisers, mind you. I'm talking about the big Carillion ships now. She's fast enough for you, old man. What's the cargo?
Only passengers, myself.
The boy, 2 droids, and no questions asked.
So what is this, a kind of local travel?
Let's just say we don't want any imperial entanglements.
And that's the trick, isn't it? And it's gonna cost you something extra. $1,000 in advance. 1,000? We could almost buy our own ship with that.
Who's gonna fly it, kid? You?
You bet I could. I'm not such a bad pilot myself. We don't have to sit here and listen to this.
We can pay you 2,000 now, plus 15 when you reach Alderaan.
Awesome, right? Okay, so even with all of those boundaries, the videos all turned out so fantastically different and creative. And by the way, you can go to Star Wars Uncut if you want to watch the whole thing. I haven't watched the whole thing. I'm not sure how that works for however long Star Wars is. But you can also see some of the best clips out there, and there are some really, really creative ones. Okay, so lesson number 3. This was one that we learned the hard way. Back when iReport first began, we had admittedly some bad assignments out there. One example that we always bring up as a group occurred back when the economic recession really started to become big news, and our TV colleagues wanted to get people on air to talk about the bad debt they were in. So we figured that we would solicit videos through iReport. And guess what? Nobody sent in a video. The mistake we made was not asking ourselves if we personally would do it. And in retrospect, I'm not surprised at all. I wouldn't want to get on camera and talk about air my dirty laundry and talk about how I'm in horrible debt and my family is suffering as a result. It's embarrassing, and the trolls on the internet would have an absolute field day with it. So again, this seems like a basic idea, but when you're coming up with a call to action for an online community, it is always best to do a gut check first and ask yourself whether it's the type of story that you would be interested in sharing, or the type of question you would be comfortable answering. And for more creative pursuits, it's a really good idea to practice the project first. You'll probably find out something new that for the longest time we were asking people, go ahead and just interview somebody on the street, it's easy. And then we tried it ourselves, and it turns out it's really hard to just walk up to a stranger and ask them to sound off on the election. So a few years ago, we did a series of weekend assignments on iReport where we gave our community a different creative challenge each week that they had 48 hours to complete. And one of the challenges asked people to simply film a walk, and with the idea that we would edit everything together into a mashup video. And it's been a few years, so I can't remember exactly where the idea started, but I do remember that it was way too complicated, whatever we were going to ask people to do. So once we figured that out, we decided that we would practice it, and we spent a good week tweaking the assignment to get it down to something simple and easy to do. And you would see iReport team members walking around for days with flip cams and iPhones just shooting at the ground and up at the sky and filming themselves. And I think this is probably why we have the reputation at CNN that we don't do a ton of work, even though we do, I promise. So in the end, we wound up with a series of basic directions, which, to bring things back to our previous point, gave people some set boundaries. And the end result turned out pretty magical.
Heading to work right after lunch, Alpha Palace, Baghdad, Iraq.
This is Trujillo City in Peru, in South America.
Hello world, this is Juan Monzue coming to you live from the Black Forest in the deep south of the Netherlands.
Welcome to Belgium, Wisconsin.
This is Gokase, Japan.
One of my favorite walks outside of Antananarivo, Madagascar.
Apologies for that abrupt stop. So obviously that's just a portion of the video. Overall, more than 450 people in 51 countries participated in this project, and that was just in one weekend. It was really fantastic. And to date, it is one of the projects that we practiced and prepared for the most at the start, and probably not coincidentally, we later won a Webby Award for it. So there you go, practice makes perfect. Okay, so congratulations. We have made it to the final lesson. We are ready to go. We know to listen and look out for great stories, and that people do well with boundaries, and that we should practice projects beforehand. We are ready to make some art and technology magic happen. Well, I have some bad news for you. No matter how much you prepare for and follow these rules, you will never fully be in control. And that's because the internet is an unpredictable, fickle place. And sometimes, especially if you're a perfectionist like me, this can get really frustrating. Sometimes you put a project out there that you think is going to be a total success, and it's something that you would do, and for one reason or another, it just doesn't gel with the audience. And this is why, nobody could predict that Rebecca Black would be an internet sensation. Like, the internet is just a weird place, and I don't think we all have it figured out. So, on the flip side, though, sometimes the unpredictability of the internet can be really amazing, and the community can help you see your work in a brand new way or lead a project in a completely new direction. And in those cases, I've found that the best thing to do is to put your control freak side away and to just go with it and embrace it. So one of our best examples of this, of a crowdsourced project taking a new turn, occurred back when we were planning our coverage of the 5-year anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. We took inspiration from one of our favorite projects on Flickr that invites people to take an old photo and line it up with the present-day view. We figured that this would be really interesting to do with pictures back in 2005 and today, because it would help us to see how much had changed over time, or if nothing had changed. We found that in some situations. So this was an image I actually took when I was in New Orleans. I was practicing our previous point. So this is a relatively complicated assignment, right? It's a lot tougher than just take a 1 minute walk and film it. So I figured we need to make things as easy as possible for our community. I spent a good month going through hundreds and hundreds of CNN images and finding the exact photos that we wanted to offer up to our community. And once I picked out those images, I spent countless hours zooming through Google Street View and trying to pinpoint the exact locations where those photos were taken. The idea was that we would offer everything up to our community, and all they'd have to do, they'd find the spot, all they have to do is take that photo and take an awesome picture like this. And in the end, no one really did that. Instead, iReporters opted to use their own photos. They said, sorry, CNN, thanks for all these images, but I want to use my own photos instead. And I could have been mad that all my preparation was a waste, but I wasn't, because the end result was so much more powerful. There were personal stories behind all of these images. In a lot of cases, these iReporters hadn't been back to these locations because it was too painful, and this project gave them a reason to. And I really love this quote. This is from an iReporter named Lauren DiMaggio, and she says, "It was only 5 years ago, but these are definitely pictures back in time. Looking at them brought back the feelings of being helpless and out of town, wondering if we could ever come home." So Lauren wasn't the only one who did this. Several iReporters independently decided that they were going to take their own photos and go visit a place where, for example, their house once stood, and they'd never been back. And this project just became so much greater than I ever could have imagined as a result. So there are my 4 lessons for making crowdsourcing magic happen. To recap, everyone has a story, and therefore we should all be listening. Boundaries are a good thing, and people tend to get really creative within them. You should always start with yourself when coming up with an idea, and it is important to embrace the unpredictable nature of crowdsourcing. Even with these tried and true lessons, you'll never be in control, and that's okay. I hope you took away something valuable today, and if you decide to try your hand at a crowdsourced project, good luck. Thank you.
All right, so we're going to do a quick Q&A with Katie. So if anyone has any questions, just raise your hand and she'll call on you. I'm going to play the organizer card, though, and I have a question first for her. So crowdsourcing, I feel like, is controversial, and especially when it comes to artists and what they do. And I know there's a lot of artists here, whether they're designers or photographers or illustrators, and especially when it comes to art, crowdsourcing sometimes is a little controversial. So how do you deal with that in the realm of reporting? Has there been any pushback in reporting, especially from CNN?
Way to start with a softball. Just kidding. So that's a great question, and I anticipated it coming. So yeah, it is controversial. We do not pay iReporters to send in their photos and videos, but in the same way that people weren't paid to do Star Wars Uncut, they did it because they love Star Wars and they want to do it. And we do not make anybody send in their photos and videos. And a lot of people, in a lot of cases, people do it because they want to, and also because they want to get a story out. We found this especially with the uprising in the Middle East from Egypt last year was huge. People didn't even care about getting credit because they wanted to stay anonymous for security reasons. They were just so concerned and happy to have a platform where they could get their stories out there. We do a couple things on iReport. Number one, we don't have we have a my brain's going like, non-exclusive rights. So people can upload their photos and videos, but they still own them, and they can upload them anywhere else. They can sell them, do whatever they want. The other thing we do is when we do projects like Katrina Then and Now, or last year I did one about Occupy Wall Street, where people really go above and beyond and have some really fantastic contributions. We try to, with the Occupy Wall Street one, for example, we worked with some really fantastic photographers in different states and countries where they photographed protesters. And we linked to the photographers' portfolios and personal websites. And this story made it to the homepage of CNN.com. And as a result, these photographers got a bigger audience than they probably ever would be able to on their own. And later, some of these people who were a little shaky, weren't sure if they wanted to participate, we emailed back and forth, and they said, I've got jobs thanks to this, like a huge audience. So those are the kind of things we do to help, you know, we really, really appreciate our audience, and obviously we wouldn't be here today without them. So we definitely try to have it be a symbiotic relationship. Yes?
First, let me say that the work you're doing here is amazing because it brings big, meaningful events, Katrina only being one example, into a perspective that you couldn't get elsewhere. But, you know, I wonder how at iReport you guys consider, or if you consider, your journalistic responsibility. Because one of the things I worry about is this push for as much instant buzz as we can create leads to what happened at your network yesterday, which was
Yeah, so thank you for the comment about the work. So actually, like I mentioned, the iReport team is here today. There are, I think we're up to 10 now. There are several of us, and it is our job, like I mentioned at the start, to vet and approve anything that's sent in. We never just take a photo or video and put it straight to the air. And it actually frustrates our colleagues a lot because we're not as speedy as they would like. They just want to take something, put it straight to air. But we are very firm that we need to talk to the person first, make sure that they actually took this photo or video. Sometimes we saw this whenever there's severe weather, we see this amazing tornado image, and it turns out it's Photoshopped from years before. So we take that very, very seriously. We have some tricks where we can go into Photoshop or other places and see what kind of cameras people use, and we take vetting very seriously. Sorry, I'm a broken record. But it's so important because we want to make sure we get the stories behind these images. And yeah, so did that answer your question? What was the question? Oh, sorry. So the question was, what do we do? He worries a little, I hope I'm summing this up, he worries a little that in an era where we are just trying to get news out as quick as possible, what do we do at iReport to ensure that we're just not throwing up an image on the screen really quickly? So basically, that's what our vetting process is all about. Mm-hmm. Yes. Sure. So he's asking if there's any tension between the journalists at CNN and the iReport team. And to be completely honest, it's kind of a love fest between the iReport team and journalists. So we actually just got done with a conference at the CNN Center where we brought several iReporters in. They came in and they learned from CNN journalists about storytelling and photography and so on. And it was really gratifying to sit in these sessions and hear some of our best writers at CNN.com talk about how they are able to tell stories even better thanks to the iReporters who are there sharing their stories. I don't think we'll never replace writers. We just tell stories better together. The other thing is on our team, like I mentioned, we're constantly growing because we're journalists on our team, so it's our job to really get the stories behind the images and to help tell that story in a greater way. Yes? Sure, exactly. So we get, on average, about, how much content we get in daily and what our process is. So we get, on average, about 500 photos or video submissions a day. And when people send their content to iReport, it shows up directly on the site. This was something iReport started in 2006, and in 2008, our website launched where everything just published directly to the website, which made our legal team really nervous, because anybody can post anything. So we have a team of moderators around the world, and it's their job to always be watching the site, and they pull stuff like porn or something that's alleging violence, stuff like that. They're the first line of defense. And then my team, like I mentioned, we keep an eye on the site and are looking for those really great stories that are worth sharing. And we vet and approve those stories. When people upload something to iReport, they accept our terms of use, and they also share their phone number and email address with us, and that's how we contact them and get them on air and get their name to put it on CNN.com and all of that. The one line of defense we have is when people upload their stories to iReport, you'll see a bar on the image that says not vetted for CNN. That way, if somebody says, I don't know, like that a celebrity has died or whatever, there won't be the big CNN, logo, and then this story, we kind of cover ourselves that way. And then when we approve something, it gets a magic red button that says CNN iReport on it. Anything else? Yes? Sure. So her question was, is there ever a time when you want to find stories from remote areas, and how do you get those stories? First off, one of the facts that we are probably most proud about at iReport is that we have an approved story from every single country in the entire world, which is really, really awesome. We did, Daphne's back there cheering, we did something a few years back called the Global Challenge, because we realized we had just 50 countries left that we hadn't heard from. So we went on a very aggressive social media campaign saying, Nauru, that was our last country that we hadn't heard from. Nauru, where are you? And so, and the word spread, our TV colleagues got the word out, and we eventually got an iReport from every country. In a lot of cases, though, these were expats living in countries. iReport we just have English, and then there's also Spanish, but that's it. So I would love to have more opportunities to reach people. I think probably the best way is to work with different companies, figuring out how to get cameras out to some of these places, because there are so many areas that stories aren't being told because there isn't that same access to the internet. And that's definitely where I think we're going to be going in the next few years. Cool. Thank you guys so much.